All right, welcome back to ZenMadman's Nutty Pot Limit Omaha journey. I think that's what we're calling it. This is volume 8, which means it is the first day of a new week. Week number 1, I'm going to do like a journal kind of thing, like a vlog type deal. Maybe there'll be a link over, let's see, probably this way. And like in the video description or something. It'll be short, kind of a sum up of week number 1. I'll just talk about week number 1 here in terms of I feel like I've established a good baseline habit in terms of playing a session every day where I'm focused reasonably on the action and doing a session review after that first session every day. I want to continue to step up my poker habits, but I feel like it's a good start. And to some extent, I'm trying to kind of model, good poker studying habits, although there's a lot more to it. All right, full pot bet from the small blind. We have absolutely nothing in this limped pot. The player on our left looks like a friend of poker, and the player on our right is short stacked. We have another short stack who overlimps the button. This looks like a good game so far, even though we have very little data. Sometimes, small data points we don't want to make huge inferences from, but we can make some general observations. All right, so they flopped top 2, they turned top 3, they rivered top 4, that elusive top 4 pair, and they checked the river, which seems reasonable since the straight got there, which was one of the reasonable draws for someone to have, and they're unblocking the straight because they just have all the pairs. All the pairs. Yeah, so looks like the stream just went live in your land because we're 3 minutes apart, separated by a gulf of time. But if you type stuff into the chat, I'll try to acknowledge it in chat and then address it on the air, which will be a few minutes after your comment. All right, so some action going in on this royal looking board. Really putting a lot of money in. You should have the queen of diamonds. They had the jack of diamonds. They put some money in, which is fair. Somebody having the queen high flush, they would have to have it with a 9 or lower. All right, this is a hand that I will raise from the button. I think with this dangler, I feel okay playing this against one limper. The more multi-way this gets, the more that deuce becomes a liability. However, being the button with a bunch of loose players, I kind of feel like this can't be that bad, right? Unless the blinds are super aggro. I'm just gonna get, a 6-way pot in position with a deep SPR where, my king jack 9, I can flop a lot of nice straight draws. And here I have a straight flush draw, I guess. I just need the jack and the 10. And here now I have a gut shot, which is basically all that I'm interested in. I mean, if I spike a 9, I'm going to feel okay-ish about it, but not fantastic, given that this is a 6-way pot. Like, people have things that hit the board. So I'm certainly not continuing with this. Even though, theoretically, my implied odds, it's like, oh, I'm getting 4-1 with a gut shot, and then I potentially have implied odds of, many to 1. But the problem is, if people want to put in many chips on a 10 river, they probably have the straight with me, right? It's so easy for somebody else to also have king jack. Now, if the turn were a 9 of spades, we'd be sitting pretty, except we have the 9 of spades in our hand, so they'd be like, hey, why didn't you say something that the deck was fouled? This card is weird because it's like, if somebody had 2 pair already, then this can give someone a better 2 pair. Nobody's really going to have like ace here or anything. They did make a better 2 pair, and the other person actually just had top pair they were betting with. I didn't catch all of the whole cards. This game looks fantastic, by the way, so I'll probably play it for a while. Let's see. Let's take a look at some of these hands. So on the turn, somebody called with, all right, 9, 6, 10, 8. So they had a flush draw. That was the big blind. The big blind's the most reasonable looking player. They had a pretty nice hand pre-flop. 10, 9, 8, 6 double suited. They flopped a pair and a flush draw. They turned a gutter to go with it, and then the river was obviously nothing. So we can think the big blind might be a reasonable player. Everybody else, I don't know. Looks like a good game. So the nuts on the turn are still the nuts on the river. So the player who bet you know, is going to keep betting fairly frequently, and the player who didn't raise is going to have this generally kind of fragile range. They could have had a hand like 4 or 5. Fragile maybe isn't. I feel like there's going to be some situations where I'm really going to want to use that phrase in a more useful way. So yeah, bottom 2 pair, the person on our left bet there on the river, I believe, which I'm not sure whether they thought they were bluffing or thought they were value betting. It's hard to say, but they did have a flush draw on the turn as well. And the player who called had queens and 2s and aces. Wow, so they turned 3 pair. They had top 2 pair, and they called down with top 2 pair and the nut flush draw. Yeah, so that's like maybe a little passive. They were blocking the straight as well, but it seems like this player, you know, likes to put money in pot out of position with marginal holdings multi-way. There's some ways of abbreviating this that would be more efficient, but whatever. So that's a good note to have, right? A good thing to be able to observe. Like, maybe when we make some hands, we're going to check it to this person and they're going to bet for us. Also, when they're betting, we don't need to give them as much respect as we might give a player where we hadn't observed something along those lines. So yeah. This would be an interesting flop for our hand. I'll just talk about our hand as kind of a little bit of hypothetical post-flop situation. Bottom set, but nobody raised, so king-king isn't a large concern. 10-10, very real possibility, though. And king-king, possible. You know, we want them to have, like, king-10. We also have the open-ender, which is a draw to the nuts, but 2 of those outs will bring a flush, so it's really only 6 outs to the nuts, right? A non-heart ace or 9, plus a 4, so that would actually be 7 nut outs on this flop. So a lot of turn cards that we could play very confidently, and if nobody put in a lot of money on the flop, also a spot where we could play pretty confidently. And having said all that, when you have a set that might be set under set, right, so you can be getting crushed, if you also have potentially an 8-out draw, that helps a lot, because that means when you're behind, wow, they had aces and kings. Wait, what happened? Did I not fold properly? I must not have folded properly pre-flop. That's tragic. Wow. So aces and kings. Sometimes you click the buttons in ignition and they don't really take. I don't think it's my mouse. I think it's ignition. Could maybe be something like a connection issue. I'm not sure. But, you know, kind of annoying. Anyway, this player had ace, ace, king, king. And what position were they? They're the small blind now, so they must have been the big blind. Checks, ace, ace, king, king in big blind. Let's double check that, though. I'm going to look at the action, pre-flop. Yeah, the big blind waited till the flop. So they just checked pre-flop with ace, ace, king, king. So that is super passive. And just something to be aware of. So in the future, if we do have a hand like 4-4 there, or if we had 10-10, to know, yeah, that player can have kings. And I did say it was possible, but that's quite shocking, actually. It's not just like king, king, 7 deuce, rainbow or something. Yeah, it's rainbow, but they had aces and kings. I mean, that's a very good hand. All right, so overall, this game is looking fantastic. And the player that I thought maybe is kind of solid, but so far they've only played hands passively. They haven't played any hands aggressively. So that's, you know, something to keep an eye on in the developing situation. We'll keep you posted. All right, 10s and 8s and a 6. You know, if somebody makes running trips, that's not going to be a boat unless they also had a 6 or an 8. In which case, you know, they would have turned a boat if it was an 8. So this half pot bet is a little, you know, it warrants the side eye. Really. I mean, they could have been slow. Oh, no, some money's been going in. Shouldn't comment too much on this hand. Haven't followed from pre-flop. So they did have the 10-6. My guess is the other person either hit a 10 or had something like 8-6, or no, they could have something really weird. So 10-6, that's not the right board. Oh, I don't get to see it. I don't get to see it because I wasn't dealt in. And usually I wouldn't post if I'd missed a blind like this. I'd just wait for the big blind to come around. But we're making a video here. We're streaming. I don't want you to sit there while I miss like 4 or 5 hands. It's unfortunate that we even missed the 2. All right, so this is, as far as paying $1.50 to get a hand in the cutoff, a suited ace and pair of sixes, I might even, like, I'd be tempted to come in with this behind a couple of limpers. In a game like this, I think, we don't want to be loosening up too much, but there are certain types of hands. This hand has a nut flush potential, and it's, got a set maker. So on this board, my sixes are an overpair, technically, and a 5 will give me the second nut straight, and then I also have a 3 and a backdoor flush draw, and I can hit an ace for aces up, although that won't be fantastic because a 5 and any card from 1 through 6 will make a straight. And I'm not going to continue here. I do think this person can bet hands that I'm ahead of, but I'm out of position against someone betting pot. I'd rather do a little more folding in that spot, and then when I have hands, really just hammer them. And have hands that can either turn the nuts, river the nuts, or are good enough that I think are going to be ahead of, their range pretty significantly. So when I talk about calling a little lighter, I don't mean a pair of sixes out of position multi-way, even though it would have been heads up at that point. All right, so we folded one of the kings, so there's only one king out there. They can't both have one. This player leads out on king, queen, 5, king. It's hard to imagine an in-position player having too much, since they chose not to bet the flop. Any draws that they might have had are going to be probably thrown away. I mean, hard to vouch for this player throwing those away, but I think a lot of players know, like, yeah, on a paired board, like, probably don't draw to a lot of straights and flushes. And that player leaves along with our reads on them. So new player, $100 stack. So yeah, this is a single gapper. Decent rundown, jack high. Single suited, this is, I think in the chart this is playable, but this is what I think Daniel was saying, that he didn't play this. So I think, monotone. Having 4 flush cards to a jack, I think, has a little bit of hidden potential where, we are blocking. If we make our jack high flush, it's harder for someone else to have a flush, and we want that because we're not looking to flush over flush someone with a jack high flush. We just want our flush to be good for the most part. And here we would have turned the straight, but with the monotone flop, not anything to get excited about. All right, king 7, 2, 3, fairly tragic hand. Kind of among the worst. Okay, so now this person's open limping. I think they might be, okay-ish, but probably not too strong of a player, probably. And, no reason to put a raise in here, especially as the first limper is on the tighter side of limpers, right? They might be limping where we think in this rake structure you should probably be coming in for a raise. But while they are limping, they're not limping a super wide range from what we can tell so far. So it's not like we're going to be, we're not ahead of anybody's range with king 7, deuce 3, right? But, wow, that's, there's a lot of, okay. All right, so on the river, their quad queens were the third nuts, because someone could make a royal or quad aces. Now, I'd have felt pretty good with those 4 queens, but, yeah, what the heck? Did any money get in that pot? So the dealer bet, okay, so they went check call. And then check, 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 check. I feel like you can probably put a bet in there on the river at the least, right? You flop quads and it's like, there's not that much for people to have, but by the river, there, an ace, the turn brought a flush. I think, trying to, I don't know, I guess they were trying, maybe they were going for a check raise, hard to say, but when the opponent checks back the turn, I think it's kind of like, yeah, just put the bet out there, like make a couple bucks, right? They're gonna call you with an ace, they're gonna call you with a flush, and if they have a hand like ace king, they're gonna raise you probably, and you're gonna get stacks in. All right, more water. We need more water all the time. Full pot bet on the river, and the card pairs the board. There weren't any straights or flushes, so the board pairing doesn't change the dynamic as much, right? If somebody had aces up and that was good, then aces up is now aces full and still good. The main difference, if someone had like ace jack against like a set of sixes, set of eights, then that's changed. But there's no real indication that anybody had hands that big. I think this is a spot where you can probably value bet trip aces, as it seems very unlikely anybody's got a boat, as they would have had to have a set or aces up, right, going into the river. So I'm going to start greening folks, as it looks appropriate. I think this person's pretty green. This person, I haven't even marked an open limp. They just like over limp every hand. And then, we've got the player on our right is actually on the tighter side, but they've been doing some open limping, and this is the type of hand that I think we can easily look at and say, oh, I've got a suit, I've got 10-9-7-5, that's like a two gapper, and it's a better structure because I've got the connector at the top, and those things are true, but playing a multi-way pot with it, I think, is not fantastic. I might raise it from the cutoff. I would definitely raise it from the button. But in these super loose games, we want hands that are going to make more nuts. Here, how would I play this? I'd have a gut shot to the nuts, as well as a backdoor flush draw, bottom pair, a whole kind of assortment of sort of medium stuff. And this is another hand that I think probably looks better than it is. That queen just doesn't connect at all with anything else. I'll mark it just for, oh, I don't have my charts here. I'll mark it anyway, and maybe we won't talk about it too much post session, but I'll look it up on my own and report back. So the river to set, but that card also brought another straight, although it seems not super likely that anybody had that straight, the wee one, if they didn't have the other straight already. All right, 8-8-10-4, we got the pair. We have a dangler. I guess the 4 connects with the 8s. The 8 and the 10 connects. We have 3 of a suit. So we have a set. This is like one of the worst set flopping situations you can have. The flush isn't there yet, but there's a flush draw. Now there's 2 flush draws. There were 3 to a straight on the flop. And we're also blocking our own boat outs. So I'm just going to check it down. If they don't have anything, I'm going to win. And I think they don't have anything, and I'm going to win. But think about, like, how am I going to get value there, right? When I bet, they can think I can have queen jack, jack 7, 7-6. Those are all straights. They can have all of those hands. I'm not blocking any of them. It's a very poor set situation. Like, we're happy to have a set. Don't get me wrong. It's better than not having a set. But it's just not a board where, unless a 10 or a 9 come off, we're going to really make any money. And even when they do, we need them to have something. Okay. So they got counterfeited, but won anyway. This is a little weaker pair of 4s than I really want to be playing in this spot. I've got suited to a jack. It's basically like 2 medium hold'em hands. Pretty good flop for the hand, having said that. Basically the only rainbow that doesn't give us the back door, but middle set in pots like these, You don't necessarily want to be like trying to stack off, put all the chips in, because when you do, they're going to end up with a much higher concentration of top set because they're going to fold a bunch of other stuff and they're not going to play it as aggressively as that. But this one, I believe I can raise. I've got 3 Broadway cards, a wheel card that connects to the ace, and I am suited to the ace, even though I have a stray, a superfluous club, which I would not like to have. Having the king not be one of the suit is nice because it means if I do make the nut flush, somebody can make the second nut flush. Whereas if I had the king of clubs, I'd be blocking the hand that I really want to be there to pay me off. Okay, here, I think this is something that I can play. I've got all 3 cards connected. I've got pocket 7s for a set draw. The 7-8 is suited. I think it's enough closing the action to see a flop with this hand. And this was not the flop I was hoping to see. And it's a pretty easy fold. Yeah, so. That was a forceful bet. This is garbage. Wait, I'm gonna see whether they bet the river and whether that pawn makes any sense. I think it doesn't. I think they checked the river. They made a boat and they checked the river. And the other person had aces, double suited aces. Okay, so we were way behind pre-flop. Deuces, not very good. 10-7 suited, nice component of a hand. Okay on a board like this. But if the other 2 cards connected to them, then we would at least have a gut shot to go with a flush draw on a board like this, and we can smash a lot more boards than we can with one like that. With this disconnected hand, right? It's a hand where it's got some good elements, but it's very disconnected. Okay, and now we're heads up against the only player who seemed reasonable. Heads up, we want to play more hands, then we're going to play, full ring. I think my hand is good here very often. I'm going to go ahead and bet. I don't think they're checking back 3-5 or raising 3-5 that much. Really. This is surprising spot for them to put a raise in. They can have deuce, they can have 3-5, they can have something they slow played. Although if they did slow play, I feel like they should have to have a set like plus the nut flush draw, something with very robust equity. I guess I'll fold. I mean, I don't really... Their line is very odd. And I'm going to put that one in the pile of, let's see what they had later, because I kind of just want to see what people do stuff like this with. All right, 3 cards to a straight. Not really what we want when we have aces. And we're going to just check back. And now there's a lot of 2-pair hands they can have. I was planning to call some bets. I'm barely blocking anything. I'm not blocking the straight, although I think the straight... They were the one with the quads that hand. Yeah. So we do have some data on them being kind of a slow play-ish sort of person. And I think, I don't really want to play them heads up that much. When I played heads up limit hold'em, I basically watched like every heads up limit hold'em video in existence. Or at least all the ones on the sites I had access to at the time. And then just like started to play and felt much more well prepared. Okay, 6-5-4-4. I was pretty, psyched to get a free flop with this. I'm going to have position on the razor, but I'm going to have the worst relative position, meaning if they bet, I'm going to have to decide what to do before I know what anyone behind me decides to do. And that's a pretty big disadvantage. So I want to avoid that. And I'm going to do a thing. Hold on. No, not that. Not that thing. This is the thing. This is the thing we're going to do. And let's, we'll fold this. Okay. And everything. We'll just do that. Okay, so not a great hand, but I think I have enough to... Oh, okay. See, that's what happens when you don't pay attention. Back to the battle at hand. You know, somebody had limped in, and I was off doing another thing, which seemed important at the time, but I missed the fact that, you know, right here, there was a limper, right? And I think with this hand, I'm not going to raise with the limper. I'm going to probably just fold. If I was suited to the ace, I think raising or over limping both are fair. With the club, I'd still check this hand and feel happier, but, you know, now the board's paired, there's a flush out there. You know, somebody with a small flush can check the turn. They're not going to bet the river when the board pairs. I'm going to check it back. I think I'm going to win a fair percentage of the time with my, you know, Broadway. But aside from the fact that it's just, you know, there's a reasonable chance my hand is not good. Also, if I bet, I'm less likely to be able to get value from hands that I'm beating because the board is very scary, right? Because I'm so far down in the chain of nuts. You know, I'm not like a macadamia or a I don't know. We need a ranking of nuts, like actual nuts, and then we can actually use that, right, as some kind of weird slang. Yeah, we're gonna do that. It's on. Put it on the list. Okay, suited ace, a suited queen, pair of fives. Very attractive looking. From the hijack. Am I gonna raise any? I think I want more connectivity. I think this barely doesn't make the cut. We're gonna tag it. We're gonna analyze that for pre-flop, for post-session review. Certainly would have been an okay-ish hand. If you have a limping range, to me that seems like the type of hand that people start thinking, maybe it's not good enough to raise. Maybe I'll limp it. If the fives were queens or aces, you know, instead of it being a pair of fives, like, very strong hand all of a sudden. But, you know, a pair of fives in the hijack. I think a hand like 5, 5, 6, 7 double suited is better, but now I'm second guessing that. I'm thinking this is probably a hand to play, but again, you know, putting the work in on pre-flop ranges is very important. Here, I don't have a straight, right? Because I can only one of the cards from my hand is useful in making a straight, and I can only use 3 from the board, so I can't make a straight. This is garbage. But I think erring on the side of being a little too tight, particularly in the first couple positions in a loose game, is probably the way to go, right? I probably don't want to be spending too much time. Like, I don't want to have those marginal hands in these multi-way, out of position, kind of bloated pots where I don't have a lot of nut outs. Now that one I did have, you know, the ace-high flush draw, which maybe is what would put it over the top, but probably not. And at some point I'll do a whole like stats review where I'm looking at, you know, what percentage of hands am I raising in certain positions? How does that compare to sort of the ideal? You know, if it's a little bit tighter, I think that's probably good in this rake structure. As I don't have a source for exactly this rake structure. I would have to run a sim myself, which I could do. I have Munker Solver, but I don't have access to. I would need to like rent a server or something. And then I think even then, I think interpreting like PLO results might be a little tricky. Okay, so this person posted in the low jack, and so this ADV pip, I don't think applies to them. This is a very good 3-betting hand, I think. And because they're so short, I'm going to go ahead and do it. And if they jam over the top, like, we just get it in, and I think that's okay. And I think there's a chance that people fold. And I'm not going to have a chance to raise, right? I should have maybe thought of that. Let's see, yeah. So I'm only going to be able to flat. And then really, if I flop anything, we pretty much just rip it in. I've got top pair, I've got a gut shot, and I've got two backdoor flush draws. I think we just put the chips in, and then we get ready to rebuy. I think this player... Okay, so they've got some draws, they've got some draws, they made the nuts, and I made the nuts. Okay, so pre-flop, let's look at what these equities were. Okay, so 31% pre-flop, so we're all pretty close. Everybody had like 30 something, so I didn't get it in good pre. Here I do not want to call a raise out of position. Probably would have overlimped the small blind or open raised if it folded to me. I'm definitely going to mark that hand for review. I think it was fairly interesting. And I'll display it again. On the flop, I had 56% equity. So, you know, even if my opponent flopped something stronger, I still have decent equity, right? Because the two backdoor flush draws, the gut shot, and then also if a straight gets there, I can like keep making the higher straight. So if I turn the nuts with a gut shot, if I get counterfeited, I still have the nuts. Basically, it's their straight gets counterfeited if someone turns the nuts with me. All right, so top four pair, again, we see, takes it down. Aces and jacks and nines and eights, oh my. This hand looks pretty good for the button. I can raise or I can overlimp. I believe I'll overlimp in a spot like this. Doesn't feel like I'm going to be pushing a very large equity edge, but it does feel like it'll play fairly well. My opponents are quite loose. I do get raised. I'm going to go back and take a look at what that one other player had. Okay, yeah, we're not going to fold because, I mean, we called partially, you know, in a spot where we know we're going to have enough, you know, nut potential that if one of the blinds does raise, then we're going to be in a decent spot post-flop anyway. And, you know, not a great board. A 9 gives me the nut no flush. So now I have the nut no flush. The fact that it's a heart is great, right? Now, still quite possible somebody flopped a flush. But it's a little less likely than if the 9 were a club, because they can't have the 9 of hearts in their hand. This person raised pre, and then they decide to bet this turn after checking the flop. I think there's a reasonable chance one of these players has a flush. I can't improve to anything that beats a flush. I'm just going to go ahead and fold. But I do think there's a chance that my hand is good, but probably not, you know, that big of a chance. And they had the queen high flush, which, you know, I guess the turn bet makes some sense. And what did the other person have? Let's see. I'm going to fold my 3 jacks and a 4. And that other hand where I had that ace, king, jack, 10 double suited, my opponent on my left had ace, king, queen, 8 double suited. So heads up, I'm not sure which is better. Mine's more connected. Theirs is has, you know, the queen instead of the jack. So I think mine would be a little better because of the connectivity. And the 8 is really kind of a useless card, right? Because if you make a straight with the queen and the 8, you make a better straight with the king and the queen. Okay. I think this we can raise. Well, all right, we're the hijack. I'm gonna fold. Yeah, I'm gonna fold. I think this is pretty close. It probably, by the chart, is a hand we play, but uncertain. And I think it's okay to just err on the side of being a little nittier, right? If you're in a home game and there's a kind of particular feel to it, and you know, I mean, it's still it's tricky because you still want to be very careful, right? You don't want to go getting stacked with some king high flush. If you're confident in how you can play your hands, like here, I would have flopped the second nut straight with a draw to the nut straight if an ace came, but not a wonderful spot. The fact that my gap was towards the top rather than to the bottom. If I had king queen 10-8, I think that one I play. But again, I don't think we're going to play a whole lot of single suited, you know, king high hands. Although it is, you know, it's just a double gapper. I don't know. Gotta refine this part of the process and understanding. What was this one other hand? Okay, so that hand where the person had the queen high flush, they got called by a set. So bottom set was basically a boat draw. Bottom set's, well, the worst set, not just because it loses to the bigger sets, but also because whenever the board pairs, unless you make quads, you have the underfull. So someone with two pair can easily make a bigger full house. So I'm not saying they should have folded in that spot. I'm not sure, but their call is a little less good. Also, they had a pair on the board, so they're blocking some of their own outs. But then if that card pairs, then they have, it's a little better for how good their boat is, but they're less likely to make the boat. All right, so we've got a 3-bet out of the small blind. And what do we think their 3-betting range is? They've been 3-betting. How many times is this? This is 2 out of 4, so now that's 3 out of 5. So they've been very aggressive with the pre-flop 3-bets. Something to keep an eye on. Top set versus now a flush. Okay, so I get it. I get it. That's the same hand I had, except it's double suited that I had earlier. Actually, was that this? Yeah, the hand before that. Double suited makes a big difference, right? There's more flushes you can make, and having those flush draws is really useful. So they're being quite aggressive. This hand, AJ47, is just, I feel like it doesn't make the cut, especially out of position. Everything kind of connects to everything else, or to the next card, but the jack and the 4 don't connect, the ace and the 7 don't connect. This would be a bit of a delicate flop to play. I think I'd be pretty happy with my hand, but at the same time, these are players who can show up with a deuce 5, pocket 3s, and even if my ace 4 is ahead, if somebody has an ace and 3 random kickers, they're in very good shape. So it's really hard to be dominating, folks. Here. Oh, I think I tried to talk while drinking water. Do not recommend. And of course, like a 2 or a 5 are fairly gross cards for someone with aces and 4s in this spot. Now, the main straight draw got there, which was not what they had. They had the open-ended straight draw, and the person on the button had some kind of wheel thing. I mean, they made a wheel. Let's see, what did they have on the flop? They had 3s. Okay. On the turn, they picked up hearts. And then on the river, they made a wheel. So, interesting play. Interesting play. I'm going to say that this person is probably too aggressive. I'm going to mark them as purple. Let's look at their hand one more time. They really like these double-suited hands. Now, that is double-suited trash, right? Queen 9, 3 deuce. That's not really a good hand. It's double-suited, so it's not as bad as the other versions of that hand. But, like, 3s and 2s aren't very good cards. And they have nothing to do with queens and 9s. And the queen and the 9, like, barely have anything to do with one another. So, when that person raises, pre-flop, I think we can be we can be more aggressive in 3-betting them if they 3-bet us, and now they're gone. So there's that not quite elaborate read, but somewhat developed read. That is just, okay, we just let it go. Let it go. But every time we make a read on a specific player, we can maybe be a little more aware of things to look for, right? And how we can draw a connection from one thing to another. And a lot of these connections, for me, aren't, they're not big, like, dogmatic, oh, when someone does this, then they do this. No, it's like more of a subtle, when somebody does this, maybe they're a little more likely to do this other thing. It can often be very intuitive. We want to try to avoid intuitive senses of how, like, board runouts occur. Like, oh, when I have aces, when I have kings, an ace usually comes. Like, that's not a thing, right? That's people say it and they call them the magnets, right? But like we don't want to try and draw intuitive senses about how the randomness occurs. The randomness is random. So, any okay, Jack's full is a pretty good hand. Any kind of patterns we try to deduce from that, I think, can only get us in trouble. And here, this would be a hand I'm definitely opening from the cutoff or the button. I'm going to fold it in this spot. And again, this is another one I'm going to mark in terms of, on the list of pre-flop thoughts. So it looks like one person has 1 cent. Now, if they folded for 1 cent, that would be a hero fold. I really want them to have like absolutely nothing, maybe like a deuce, and then make like running quad deuces or something. Okay, how about a 5, running quad 5s? That would be fun. Yeah, I've never seen someone fold for a penny, to my recollection. My knee's feeling tricky. There it goes. Okay. So we have a couple players who are very interested in this pot. Now, the out of position player, I feel probably in this multi-way situation should not have been doing a lot of betting without, like, say, a boat. In position at queens, they just had to nail a queen on the river, and it would have been good. They rebought for $39.99. That's weird. That's I don't know. I feel like they do too much shopping and look at prices or something. Or maybe they had exactly $39.99 left in their account. It's always interesting when people buy in for weird numbers. Like, that also falls under the category of, like, probably don't try to read too much into it. Okay, I think they raised the last hand. Let's see what they had again. They had queen, queen, 10-3 with a suit. They were third to act. It's fun. It's hilarious how in Ignition they call it under the gun +2, but it's the cutoff. It's second to last from the field. So yeah, that's got to get more used to their formatting. There's so many different ways of formatting hand histories. I mean, I've made up my own terminology, like the low jack. And sometimes it catches on, sometimes it doesn't. In a 7-handed game, the one extra player I call the low jack -1, but like people don't generally call it that. Some people want to call it low jack +1 because it's +1 away from the button. I don't know. I'm open to, like, I really want more good names for the extra positions at a 9-handed table. But online, I'm not going to worry about that unless I'm playing tournaments, because I'm just going to be playing 6-max or heads up. All right, so we're going to fold this reasonable Badugi, right? A 9-high Badugi. Badugi is a draw game where you get 4 cards, and the goal is to make, the goal is to win money, but the Badugi, the, like, good hand, basically, is 4 cards, each of a different suit, each of a different rank. So ace, 2, 3, 4, rainbow, all different suits would be the nuts. It would be a 4-high, and here I have a 9-high, which is pretty good. It's hard to make a Badugi, get dealt a pat Badugi. So this person limp re-raised. They're playing a lot of hands. I think they can have a lot of things. They can have aces or kings or whatever, some kind of rundown. Who knows? Or just like nonsense that they just said, let's gamble, It leaves, yeah, so let's gamble is the page they were on. Ace, king, queen, 5, double suited. That's the sort of hand that you could start, like, jamming over this person with, just because, like, you're going to have pretty good equity against them, and if some people have already put in dead money, you're going to be getting this overlay, so you don't even need 50% equity. Like, if one person puts in $20, and then you and I each put in $100, now we've put in $100 to win $220, and that other $20 is just, like, bonus money, right? So we don't need to win half the pot. Half the pot would be 110. We only need to win 100, which is, I don't know, 40-something% equity. It's like 40, 44, 45. More like 45, I think. All right, I'm not going to do the math right now. It's a little less than 50. All right, King Jack 9-8 with a suit. This is a hand that, again, you know, this it seems to keep coming up. If it was double suited, it would be a lot better. I don't want to flat too many hands in this situation because the player behind me, I think, is going to 3-bet fairly often, right? We've noticed that they're kind of erratic or quite erratic, and we want to not, like, if I call here and they 3-bet, I only want to call if I'm prepared to call a 3-bet, or if my plan is to call and then back jam, right? Like if I had aces or something, I think flatting there is interesting, right? Maybe I go ahead and raise. Maybe I make the raise just big enough so if they jam, then I can come back over the top and get as much money in pre as possible. But yeah, these people are just like, okay, let's just run it. Let's run it. So top two on the left, you know, pre-flop, they were okay. Oh, Jackson sevens double suited. Yeah, that seems like a pretty good hand to get it in with against these cats right now, right? Ace King 4-4. I might usually open this from the cutoff in a spot where I'm going to get 3-bet a lot. It's not exactly what I'm looking to have. I'm basically going to tighten up my range a little bit, and then when I do get those tighter parts of the range, I'm going to play them very aggressively, right? I'm going to 4-bet more than I would otherwise. And because this person's 3-betting a lot of hands. So, you know, kings, like decent kings, I'm going to 4-bet those. Whereas usually I would be raising and then calling a 3-bet. But against this player, I think I can comfortably put in the 4-bet because they're 3-betting so much that their range is just very much weighted away from ace-ace. Because there's only so much ace-ace they can have. Okay, I'm going to copy this and put it over here. I've got a notepad now, so kind of conveniently sort of on the part of the screen that doesn't show up, but when there's notes that I want to share, then I can bring it onto the screen. I think the habit of taking notes is good. I was never a big note taker like in school, but I did find that taking notes often, I think just the taking of notes can help reinforce something mentally. It's even better doing it by hand, but typing it also I think can have that effect where it's, you know, this would have been a nice flop. I flopped the straight with the two, you know, backdoor flush draws. And but yeah, taking notes, you know, I think I want to, so I'm developing habits, right? I'm trying to build habits, and this is one habit, is doing a morning routine. It's a few habits, but we'll say it's one. Doing a morning kind of preparation and then playing a session and reviewing that session, or reviewing a few hands from the session, right? Reviewing the whole session would involve actually watching back the video and seeing not just like what hands I had questions on, but what my thought process was in all the hands, what my level of focus was, stuff like that. So, you know, among those habits, I think one would be to not just take notes, but to kind of review my notes on a regular basis and maybe put some important takeaways into some kind of a flashcard thing where I regularly remind myself of some of the things that I've learned. And you know what? That's going to be a note. This hand is very exciting. We have the nuts against not the nuts, and shockingly, the nuts have won. Right, ace nine. What did the other person have? The big blind had, oh, bottom set. Yeah, see, so there's that bottom set making the underfall, losing all its chips, which doesn't mean you shouldn't play bottom set. It means you should be careful, right? Be careful with the bottom set. It can be perilous. All right, what do we got? If anyone has, okay. A procedure for reviewing notes on the regular. So, all right, perhaps build this into evening routine. Bedtime. Yeah. Okay. So, there's a bunch of little habits that I want to have, and I think having sort of a process like at night where it's like, okay, I do this, all right. So, I'll talk about bad habits for a moment. Generally, um mm, mm, they did them dirty. Wait. Wow, they've got they flopped. Hold on. We got to look at this again. They flopped two pair. Okay, that was fine. That wasn't. I thought that was pretty dirty, but it wasn't. It was top and bottom against aces, which I mean, it wasn't a joy for aces, but at least they got out flopped, not just rivered into trips. Although the other person would have had a lot of equity, with like a gut shot, and even just a pair. You flop a pair, and the other person has bare aces. You've got a good amount of equity, and I think that's something that people often underestimate, right? And sometimes you just want to bet big on the flop with aces if you have a low stack to pot ratio, because people are going to fold too much equity. And then if you do have something really big, then they're stuck with the situation of like, oh, do I fold this good equity against aces when I'm actually crushed by like top set or something like that? All right. So yeah, I'll get back to the bad habits in a little bit. Let's look at this hand. We have a raise and some calls, and ace jack nine. Very good flop for the raiser, right? In terms of aces are gonna be not the sole province of the raiser, but the primary. The raiser should have all the ace combos, and the other players probably shouldn't. Queen 10 got there, 10-7 got there. So there were a good number of straight draws on the flop. Those were probably the most reasonable things to call with. This small bet, if you did have something like ace-ace or maybe ace-king or jack-jack, I think you probably pay it off against this player. Although it's very easy for them to have a straight. But we've seen this is not the player who bet the twos and threes. This is not the player who bet the twos and threes. Have to remind ourselves of like how people play in certain spots, and that a player has left, right? This is yeah. So I made that did I make that specific note? That's why when anytime we get something really specific, I think taking an actual note is good, so that then when we go back, we can be like, oh, that is the player who did this thing, or that's not the player who did this thing. We know, I think this is the player who's been three betting super aggro. So three bets a ton. At least earlier they did, right? They might stop. Some players are moody, right? When you get players who aren't like playing really seriously, like trying to win money, but are trying to gamble, which the goal of gambling is, I mean, the goal of gambling is to have fun, right? But it can be to win money, but not to like have a high expectation. It's just to have some situations where maybe you win money, and you can do that by just getting money and in high variance situations, and three betting, building big pots, and that can just be fun for some people. I mean, I think it's fun as long as I can do it in a relatively high EV way. That's one of the reasons I like PLO. Is it's a game where I feel like I feel good gambling, because it's a game that's built to gamble, and you're going to get it in and run it out a whole bunch of times, and like sometimes you're going to win, sometimes you're going to lose, sometimes you're going to flop huge and end up with a 7-card straight on the turn, as well as a backdoor flush draw or a regular flush draw. And the backdoor got there and would not have been good for me. Although I would have completed an 8-card straight, which I'm not sure if that beats a flush or not. It doesn't. Okay, what was that? 7-5. Right, so they had the smaller straight. Ace King 10-7 with the suit to the 7. Now this is going to be tricky, right? So if I were suited to the ace or the ace, it's so the tricky thing is that this player is going to 3-bet a lot, and I think they might even 4-bet a lot. I'm not sure. I don't feel like this is really a hand that I want to be 3-betting a whole lot with either. It's not something that... So I think I'm going to play this I'm thinking the hijack. I think the low jack might be a little too loose with the 7 being kind of meh. Although the ace and the king are good. I'm going to have to get the PLO matrix or some other tool in order to start investigating these 3-bet spots. I don't think I can continue to have such a weak idea of what I should be 3-betting and thus also what strong players are likely 3-betting. It's definitely something I've got to work on. So I think we're going to actually wrap up let me see. We're going to wrap up. All right, so this is not something I'm going to be folding. It's important to note that these players have very large stacks also. And by very large, I mean, substantially larger than normal, than the starting stacks. I flop middle pair. I still have my queens. I'm going to sit out next big blind. I'm going to check. Not a lot of really great ways for this board to run out, to be honest. If it was a queen instead of a king on the flop, I'd be feeling pretty good. But, middle pair is not worth a whole lot here. Is this a spot where I'm going to bluff? Like, no, right? I'm going to have some very high equity draws that are the ones that I can be betting with good equity and then, bluff the river potentially. But I don't think there's a lot of really low equity hands I want to be betting here. King of clubs is not a bad card to have. Ace of diamonds would be a good card to have as well in terms of blocking continue ranges. And ace deuce 9-6, one suit. We're going to fold. And that'll be it for the session. Okay, enough about socks. Yeah. So, session review time. This hand is going to be a little tricky to, we're not going to be able to talk about the 3-bet. I mean, I can line this up against some other hands. The ace and the king are good cards to have in a 3-betting range, in a 3-betting hand rather, because we're going to be blocking ace-ace, we're going to be blocking king-king. Generally in a 4-betting hand, we don't want a king because potentially we can get some king-king combos to fold, so we want to unblock those. Having an ace, having a king is nice because we're blocking a lot of the hands that might 4-bet us, and as well as some of the, the better hands in their range that might call, so we have a little bit better chance of getting folds. So this might be a good 3-betting hand. Having the player behind me who's very loose and I believe to this point has been very aggressive makes me a little more wary of calling, 3-betting, doing anything with this hand besides just folding. But I wouldn't be surprised if this was a decent 3-betting hand. Again, being suited to the ace or even the king would be substantially better than being suited to the 10. But let's just look at this hand in terms of where does it fall in our open raising range? Is it in the low jack range, right? If it's not in the low jack range, then I think it probably isn't a 3-bet hand unless it's kind of like mostly designed to be a 3-bet bluff hand. So if we look at ace Broadway single suited, it's playing a lot of those combos. Ace jack 10 7 with the suited to the jack. Is that better or worse than this? Well, the jack connects to the 7, but a king is better than the jack. So I'd say this is close. The jack high suit obviously better than the 10 high suit. So my guess is that we can open this in the low jack. It's probably fine, but in these games maybe I won't. And I don't feel bad about folding this here. I think that's fine. We go to the next hand, king 9 8 7. It folds to me. I'm in the hijack. Again, this is a hand where I think, oh, this is a triple gapper, right? There's a queen, a jack, and a 10 missing. So that makes this significantly worse, actually. What's my computer doing a thing? My computer's like getting uppity. All right. Anyway. So yeah. What do we have here? King 7 9. All right. Cutoff range. This is just definitely going to be a fold. I don't think it's even close. King Jack 10 8. It actually wants to raise single suited in the low jack. So this hand, I don't know. this hand's, it's not as good. It's not as good. The King Jack 10 has a lot of nutty straight combos. Jack 10 8 also has some, nutty straight combos. We can flop some really, really good boards. Whereas this hand, yeah, having the 3 cards connected is nice. Having the suit to the king is pretty good, though. Let's look at, like, cutoff. King 7 6 5. It's going to raise in the cutoff. So this would clearly be a raise in the cutoff. And in the earlier positions, in hijack, I think correctly identified as close, play it in the cutoff. In a game like this, even probably still play it in the cutoff, but like it could be a little dicey with specifically this lineup where we have an aggro player behind us. I do think playing slightly tighter and then like having that be the adjustment, playing fewer hands but being stickier with them, and just like having really strong equity against them and crushing them on the flop and such. All right, King Jack 9 8. This looks very similar to that other hijack hand, right? King Jack 10 8. So this is slightly worse in terms of structure of the hand. We've got a 9 instead of a 10. We'd rather have the 10. Make more broadways, right? Have better straight draws. But this is suited to the king. That's suited to the 10. So I'd say this is a rare, 4 cards without an ace that we do want to play in the hijack. But, oh, that's even a low jack open. Okay, so yeah, I think this is probably too tight. We probably can play this, but again, because of the rake, because of the players involved, I think it's okay. I definitely played on the tighter side this session. All right, this one. One thing I'm thinking here is, okay, we've got some loose players. They're aggro. This player, I think we had a concrete read, right? Having seen them do something else. I'm not sure if that was true yet, but this might have been the hand where we developed the concrete read. But Ace King Jack 10, we're going to block most of the hands that are really dominating us. It's hard for us to not have good equity against a lot of hands, right? We're just going to have good equity against most of the things we're going to be up against. So very robust equity, right? It's hard for us to be just dominated. We have an ace high flush draw. We have a king high flush draw. Our Broadway outs, when we make Broadway and the board doesn't pair, doesn't come hearts or diamonds, that's going to be good. So, and then also we're blocking those, ace, ace, king, king combinations. But even against those, I think we're fairly live. So, we go ahead and raise. And I think a mistake that I made is I could have, instead of making it 1750, I could have kind of been fancy and, let's see, I could have made it, if I make it like 15, or I think even 16, they still have room to raise. Yeah, if I make it 1650, then I've raised 13, and then they have 1350 on top. So that would reopen the betting. So even just $1 less, I don't think that would have been too fancy. I think that would have been fine. And that would have set up so that then when they jam, if this player calls and that player folds, first of all, it might discourage the player from calling, which can be nice, right? In terms of we're more likely to get heads up with all this dead money. But also, I can then come back over the top, put in all the chips, and just realize 100% of our equity on 100% of boards. And this player, maybe they fold, but they probably call it off frequently with something that we're doing well against. So anyway, I decide, okay, well, I've got less than a pot size bet here. Really, there's 93 in the middle and 55 behind, right? I have to look at my opponent's stack, not my stack, because I have them covered. So I'm basically betting 55. Yeah, I put 77, 78 out there, but 23 of that basically is coming back. So I didn't need to bet everything, but it's just easy. Click, click, all in. Okay, so Jack 9-4. I have top pair, top kicker, a gut shot, 2 backdoor flush draws. So to me, this seems just like a boom, just get it in. Anything aside from that, if I can get any better hands to fold, great. If I can get anybody to fold any equity, that's probably really good too. My hand is going to have nice equity against basically anything, but I'm not going to, and by nice equity, I mean like, yeah, if they have top set, like I'm behind, but I do have legit outs, right? I mean, I can catch running kings, I can catch running aces, I can catch running clubs, I can catch running spades, I can catch a queen. So there's a lot of ways to win, even against top set, which would be like the worst thing for me to run into. Yeah, so just getting them to fold anything with this short of a stack to pot ratio, I think is usually a victory and is at least fine. So they call though, and I think they turn the nuts, right? Is it going to show their hand? Yeah, so they turn to the nuts. We both turned to flush draw, but mine was to the nuts. And then on the river, their straight got counterfeited. They still had a queen high straight, but I make the king high straight. So I ended up hitting my gut shot. And, that just shows how, like, all the different outs adding up. You can get there one way, you could get there another way. I could have made the flush. I ended up making the straight. And the other player had ace, king, queen, 8. Also double suited. So they had my spades covered, which is unfortunate. And that's one of the reasons that my equity isn't as strong as it could be. The other player had 2 of my clubs. Also unfortunate because they're blocking some of my ways of making the nuts. But I think, ultimately it was the connectivity of my hand, right? The fact that I had 4 Broadway cards and cards came out where, if you have 4 Broadway cards, you're usually going to make a straight on this. And, all right, let's do the equity calculator. Let's hope that this doesn't crash it. We've had some issues in the past with some crashing stuff, but hopefully it should be fine. Here, obviously, on the river, we know what the equity is. What's my equity on the turn? It's going to be decent, right? Because I've got a queen, and then I've got a club, and that's it. So it's, I don't know, I guess in the 20% ballpark, right? 25%. So even on a very bad turn card, I've still got 25%. We'll go back and look at the flop, and I think we already saw this, but on the flop, I've got 56% equity. And if I remove this other player, then we've got 65% equity. So the money that's going in on the flop is going in good. But having said that, should they fold? No, they've got 35%, and they're facing a bet that's like half pot. Even if I was potting it and that was all in, they only need 33.33333%, right? 33 and a third. So they're going to call there with 35% equity. There's no pot limit Omaha bet heads up that you should fold to. But it's even better here. Okay, so I'll paste this back in. And now we'll go pre-flop. And we'll calculate that. Okay, and so as you can see, I actually have the worst of it, right? Because, I've got 31%. So the money's going in very slightly bad. I need 33 and a third. So I'm a little bit behind that. But really, we want to think in terms of ranges. And if, for instance, I just changed their, let's see, change this. Can we change this to diamonds? Like if they happened to have diamonds instead of spades, I think I'm going to have that 33. Yeah, so now all of a sudden I have 42, right? Wow. So having that flush draw be live is a really big deal. And and that cover, they're basically taking equity with diamonds away from the other person, because either way they've got a live suit, they've got it to the ace, but here they're taking that person's equity instead of taking my equity. And then I'm of course more likely to get there when somebody doesn't have 2 of the spades. But let's for a moment, let's remove that button person's range, and let's just look at how we are against aces, and if we crash because of it. Oh no, oh right, we have to put in. No. All right, it's this way. Select. All right, we'll select from here. Single range selector. We'll just go pairs, and we'll go aces. I mean, not or better, right? Just aces. And we'll just create that range. And we'll see how are we doing against aces. So, we've got 36% even against aces, which is a hand like we really don't want to be against. And there's better ways of doing this that are going to be more accurate, but let's see how we're doing against kings. We're going to be doing better, right? Still, we're behind kings. There's no reason to think that our opponent's range is this narrow, though. As we see, let's just go ace, king. Oh, all right, ace of spades, queen of spades, king of hearts, 8 of hearts. They're going to be ahead, right? I'm trying to think how much equity. Yeah, they're going to be ahead, but not like way, way ahead, I think. Oh, they're not ahead. Okay. So even when they have one of our suits covered, the having the 4 cards to the Broadway is that much better. That's interesting, right? And if we change the suits so they don't have our suit covered, then I think we're going to be substantially favorite. Okay, so it actually doesn't even make that much difference having the suit covered. That's interesting. I guess because we both have the suit, it just doesn't come that often. But yeah, so good to know that Ace King Jack 10 double suited is a favorite over Ace Queen King 8 double suited. Something I didn't know before. I did kind of think probably, but wasn't certain. So we know that for certain now. And let's move on to another hand. That's enough of that one. How many hands do we have? We have this. All right, we'll just take a look at where are we playing this in the hijack pairs of 5s. What do we want to? Where's my hijack chart? Oh, the hijack chart is missing. That's the problem. That's why it's been. Is this it? There we go. Pairs with hijack. All right, so small pairs. Ace 8 5 5 with a single suit. Oh, so yeah, this is clearly a hand that we want to play as a default in this game. Maybe, maybe not. But I think it was probably a mistake folding this hand. Probably a little too nitty. Let's see, Ace Queen 5 5, Ace King 4 4 with 1 suit. Yeah, so definitely better than I was giving it credit for. Having those big suits is very nice. All right, what's going on here? Oh, this is that heads up hand, and we flop top 2, check, check, and the deuce on the turn. I feel pretty strongly that like my hand is good here most of the time. They would have had to slow play something better, or I guess if they have a hand like Ace Jack 5-3, it's a pretty reasonable hand to check back. And so when I bet and they raise, like they probably have 5-3. They might not. They might just be bluffing. They might have like Ace Jack 5-5 and be like, oh, I'm blocking the nuts. I'm gonna, if so, good for them. And I think I marked this one in terms of just checking out later what they actually had, because it's not going to tell me how an individual plays because I won't see this individual again, but it just gives a range of the possibilities. And over time, it's different than seeing different board runouts, right? I mean, we have to understand that we're only seeing glimpses of how people play. We're not seeing every hand. I mean, we can go back and look at every hand. That would be quite exhaustive and exhausting. But, there might be some merit in that. But it's a more important picture because, yeah, there's randomness in it. I don't know. We don't want to put too much credence into what's going on in spots like that. But we also have, I think, some value that we can get out of it. So, moving on. All right, 6s. Yeah, I think this is. Is this worse than the Ace Queen? I think having the 2 big cards, and even just having one of them suited, is having those big cards, we can make big nut straights, and having the smaller cards, fewer of our straights are going to be nuts. But where is this? The hijack. I'm getting a feeling from the previous hands we reviewed. This is one we're going to play. 6-6-5 deuce. Here we have 6-6-7 queen. So having one of our suits to the queen, I think the deuce connects to the 6 and the 5 barely, but this to me looks like a hand where I don't know. It also says like King 9-9-6, and that feels maybe better than this. I don't know. Having 7-6 is nice, like an actual connector. I think I'm still gonna declare this borderline, and then I'm going to declare this session review complete. We had a few detours aside from just the hand review, right? Which I'm a little divided on, right? I feel I enjoy the interaction on Twitch, and I think there's value in that. But at the same time, I also want to have a high level of focus. So, to what extent is that adding to the experience? If you're watching this on YouTube, you can let me know if you have any comments in terms of, is that very annoying, kind of having this detour? I don't know, maybe I'll even have edited out of this video. I think probably not, but maybe. But yeah, let me know. And that's it. I'll see you next time. Cheers.